Hello all of you beautiful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and today I want to talk to you about video games that actually make us confront our own fears. Now, I'm not exclusively talking about horror games that do seem to have a stranglehold, as it were, on this concept, presenting horrible enemies and situations that make you directly go, yes, I am afraid of spiders, or afraid of drowning, thank you for reminding me. But the video games that I've chosen for this list, well, they're slightly different because they actually make you confront something that maybe you didn't know you were actually afraid of. But to better explain, let's crack on with the list. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video games that made you face your own worst nightmares. Number 8, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice follows a young picked warrior by the name of Senua as she journeys into Helheim in order to save the soul of her dead lover. On her way, she must battle otherworldly forces and slay various monsters as well as solve multiple puzzles. But that's not all that she has to contend with. You see, Senua suffers from a form of psychosis that has her haunted by visions and tormented by voices. In a set of headphones, there is nothing quite like Senua's Sacrifice. As you make your way through the beautiful but desolate land that Ninja Theory has crafted for you, these voices begin circling your head, talking, arguing, and berating you constantly. It's a truly dizzying effect, and one that does a fantastic job of putting us in a position where we don't trust what we see or hear. In the world of video games, anything can happen. It also forces us to confront the idea that just because we can see it, it doesn't mean that it's real, and just because you can hear a voice, it doesn't mean that you should listen to it. It poses a terrifying question that our reality isn't what we believe it to be, but as you will see through playing through this game, overcoming these voices and negativity is a great struggle, but one that is incredibly worthy indeed. Number 7, Dark Souls. We all know that Dark Souls is, well, bloody hard. It has been said many times before and it will probably be said again. Even if you don't play Dark Souls, you know that it is bloody hard. It's just a fact. But it's also a fact that people who play Dark Souls like to say that the game is not hard, that they're so utterly brilliant that they no longer think of the game as being anything other than a relaxing stroll in a dying land where a simple pirouette and a near and nary a swear word can steer their level 1 character to the kiln of the first flame and kick Gwyn to death without either shoes or a well-timed parry. But these people often forget how it was back when Dark Souls first came out, where Lordran was just about as dangerous a place as we'd ever seen in video games. They forget the feeling of getting slapped to death by a one-armed skeleton that just won't die, what it was like to get rinsed hundreds of times by the Anor Londo archers, or just that sinking feeling of the second gargoyle finally joining the fray atop the undead parish. Things being hard aren't scary in and of themselves, but the fear of failing is as deep and as old as a Lord's soul. The fear that you're not going to be able to finish what you've started, the fear that you're going to have to give up, the fear that you're not good enough. These are all feelings that Dark Souls presents to you and tells you that you are able to overcome these. Little by little, you face your fear and realize that you're going to finish what you've started and you're not going to give up and that you are good enough. Number 6, Blair Witch. Being lost, I'm pretty sure, is a fear that we all have. That whole, oh my god, I'm like 4 years old again and I've wandered off and I can't find my grandma in the women's department at Marks and Spencer's, that type of lost. Being lost is also something that happens quite regularly in video games, but it's often as a result of not knowing what to do or where to go, as opposed to a deliberate design choice. It was more of an irritation than fear in these cases, and you probably just reached for your phone to Google the route ahead of you instead of facing the fear that you might actually genuinely be lost. But that's what Blair Witch does especially well. You do not know where you are and you do not know where you're going, but you do know that you need to keep moving. As time bends around you and the thick Maryland wilderness stretches out in all directions, the silent dread that you don't have a single clue as to how to get out of there will permeate your every waking thought. It's a horrifying experience to say the least, but it's one that Blair Witch absolutely nails. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. Number 5, Little Nightmares. Do you remember what it was like to be a small child? Do you remember how big a table was when you were only 3 feet tall? How high you had to lift your arm to reach a door handle, or just how much effort it actually took to pull the thing? And do you remember what it was like to be able to fit under your bed because you heard a noise on the landing in the middle of the night? Yeah, everything's much scarier when you're a kid. Little Nightmares remembers all of these things and has no problem getting you to feel all of those long-forgotten miseries. As a prisoner aboard a great ship known as the Maw, it is your job to escape, which is a simple goal, but one that is made infinitely more difficult by the adults that stand in your way. All bulbous heads and inexplicably long limbs, the enemies in Little Nightmares perfectly encapsulate our childlike fear of not only being small, but of seeing the world in an out-of-proportion state, which you would do as a child. It's like a dream that's a little left of center, like a little nightmare. Number 4, Life is Strange. So Life is Strange is pretty divisive. If you have an innate fear of all games turning into slow walking, point-and-click adventures a la The Walking Dead, then, well, you don't really need to worry about that anymore, as Telltale Games is sadly dead and buried. But even if that was something that worried you, Life is Strange is a different beast entirely and doesn't deserve to be thought of as another game of this ilk. It is, at once, a power fantasy that doubles as a humbling look at just how inconsequential our actions can be. It gives you, a teenager Max, special time rewinding abilities and tasks you with using them in order to save your best friend, the other children at your school, and eventually the whole of Arcadia Bay. But the thing is, it's all for nothing. I mean, sure, you can solve a murder, and sure, you can watch a skater kid lose his deck 6 times in a row, but can you actually affect change? Can you rewind time when it matters? Can you stop a peer from killing herself at the last second, or is the damage already done? Can you save the victims of Mr. Jefferson? Well, no, not really. Life is Strange is a meditation on the futility of good intentions, a dour look at just how unimportant we all are in the grand scheme of things, even if we do have magic time-bending abilities. But what it should instill within you isn't to just sit there and think good thoughts, but to actively go out there and do them, because it's only when we commit to an action that it actually has a cause and effect. Number 3, Shadow of the Colossus. Wander is just like the rest of us. He has a mission, he has a direction, and he has a way in which he hopes to achieve this. But unlike most of us, Wander's goal is to resurrect the soul of his friend who he carries on the back of his horse to the Forbidden Land. When he's there, a disembodied voice promises the revival of this girl, but only if Wander can slay 16 colossi who roam the land. And so off we go, finding these giant creatures and felling them as though they were nothing more than dead trees, regardless of whether they attacked us or not. And lest we not forget, most of them don't. Instead, they just opt to go about their peaceful business of living and let live. But in we barge and snuff them out. It's only as the game progresses do we realize that maybe these colossi aren't the bad guys. Maybe it's Dormin, the owner of that disembodied voice, and by extension, us. Shadow of the Colossus forces us to think about what we do to save a loved one. Would we unwittingly slay a peaceful and majestic race of creatures for the promise of magic? Would we do it in the full knowledge of just how destructive our actions were? This game asks us just how dark our own shadows are, how selfish our hearts can be. It asks us these questions, and as we ride across the lush vista of the Forbidden Land, the sun glinting off our sword and resolve ever hardening, our answers are actually pretty terrifying. Number 2, The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 is a game that has divided a fan base like no other in recent memory. Some hail it as the pinnacle of the generation, whereas some others think it no more than just a self-aggrandizing, miserable slog that goes on way longer than it really should. And wherever you fall in this great debate that is still raging across the internet as we speak, it's largely actually unimportant to the position it holds in this list. It's not about whether you like it or hate it, but it's about the incident that set brother against sister and son against daughter in this PlayStation civil war. And of course, I'm going to be talking about spoilers for the game, which will follow now. It's about Joel's death, a quick execution with a golf club with barely a hint of an introduction. It's brutal, tragically unexpected, and absolutely unbefitting of a character whose return we've waited 8 actual human years for. But you know what? That's why it works, and that's why it's scary. If Joel can die in such a way, in a world that is written and planned and really was set up to revolve around him, how can we expect to die? Joel's death forces us to face our own mortality and how quick, brutal, and undignified our ends might be, and that is genuinely terrifying. At number 1, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remaster. I know it seems weird to have this game at the top of this list, but please bear with me. If you were around in 1999, there's a very good chance that your life was ultimately changed by the release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. It is a mix of carefree attitude, hardcore arcade fun, and the absolute ridiculousness of its mad, catchy soundtrack. And it probably had you begging your parents for jeans large enough to hide 6 of your friends in. And back then, when that game came out, we were young. We had our whole lives ahead of us, and you know what? That sun shone a whole lot brighter. But now here we are with the release of the remaster of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and that wave of nostalgia that grabbed us all. It's awesome, but it's actually a little bit mirror-shattering because we're older, and the fear that we face in playing this game is actually the fear of loss. Friends that we used to share multi-taps with are now gone and distant, or dreams that we used to have now fallen by the wayside. We don't have the immortality of youth anymore. And this remaster of Tony Hawk's now isn't just a window to the past, it's a window to your past, of who you were, who you are, and who you hoped you would be. And there's nothing scarier than looking at yourself and feeling like you don't measure up. But you know what? I don't want to end on that point, because you see, this feeling that you don't measure up, that feeling that you're not worthy, I just want to state for the record, it's not true. You are a massive ledge. You deserve love, happiness, and success. We all do as human beings, and every single fear that I have listed on this list does not need to have power over you. Sure, it can grip us from time to time and make us aware of what's going on in our lives, but it does not need to control your future. You control your future. So you know what? The next time that you don't feel up to scratch, take a look at yourself and remember that you are a massive ledge. Punch that fear in the nuts, kickflip over its face, let it lie gasping on the floor, and move forward in hope. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 video games that made you confront your own worst fears. I hope that you enjoyed that, or at least got something from it. And if you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice. It's my personal board game channel where I stream every single Wednesday and Sunday. As I said before, my friends, treat yourself with love and respect because you goddamn well deserve it. And go out there and absolutely smash it. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.